Jenny, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm okay, not too bad today. Where I want to begin with you is now you had a whole different career before jumping into this music thing. So in 2018, as you made that leap, what made you make that decision?
Good question. Yeah, so basically what happened was early 2018, I was posting cover videos on my Instagram, and friends were kind of digging them and whatnot. And I wanted to play a show in New York City, and I reached out to a bunch of venues, and basically every venue just said, "Hey, you sound great, but we love original material." And I'd never written a song in my life.
Okay.
So a friend of mine was just like, "Why don't you just write a song?" And I was like, sure, I'll just write a song. And I did. I tried, played my first show in June 2018, and just it was a disaster.
Okay.
And then I kept writing, and I kept working at it, and pretty soon after I wrote my first single. But really the leap was I wasn't fed up with what I was doing, because I was really interested in it. It was really fascinating. But I think there was something about reconnecting with music, because I've always played it. And it just kind of was like the right time. I don't know. It's hard. It just felt like the right time.
Because, like you say, you'd always been into music. So was that always on the kind of in the back of your mind as you were doing that other job? And was that always like, I would like to put up it, because like you said, you hadn't written by that point. So, but was that always a goal of yours in a way to start writing songs? And
I think when I was younger, the concept of writing a song was really cool, but I just never, I don't know, I don't even know why I never wrote songs when I was younger. It was the concept of a professional career in music was never in my mind, ever, which is crazy to think about. Right. So yeah, that was never in my mind.
Especially when you made that choice, then, because being a musician isn't always the easiest of jobs. So did it feel like a risk when you kind of said, well, I'm going to go 100% into this kind of volatile area?
Huge risk. Okay. I honestly, when I did it, I was just there was circumstances that just felt like it was the move to quit my job and go for it. So something had just kind of triggered then, and an event happened, and then I made the decision. Okay. But there's many days where I'm like, why did I do this?
Well, I'm glad that you did, because otherwise we wouldn't have your music. So those first couple of months then that you wrote, what were they like? Was it challenging? Was it frustrating? Or was it kind of easier than you expected? How did it go?
Super hard. I think the biggest thing was the first thing I tried to do was successfully write a song. So it was like, okay, how do I use my knowledge, put chords together, and put some lyrics down and actually come up with something? And then it was, okay, how do I write something that isn't insanely cheesy? Because I feel like everyone, when they first start, it's, the same kind of concepts that you write about in the beginning, and love and this and that. And so the second kind of challenge was, how do I write something that is a little more honest and true to me, and isn't so cheesy? And then really the third kind of phase was, all right, so I know how to write a song now. I actually understand how that works. And I know how not to sound insanely cheesy, but how do I write from like the most honest place I can? Because I don't think, it wasn't until I wrote Slow Burn that I didn't really feel like I was writing from like within, like a really honest place within myself. Real place.
What was leading up to that song then? Can you take me through kind of that, I don't know if transformation is the right word, but kind of allowing you to open yourself up to get to a point where you can write a song like that?
Totally. I mean, I was definitely going through a really difficult time then, hence the transition from what I was doing. I felt very lost and very confused, and things just weren't lining up. And I would say it was a bit of a depressive period. And I think finally one day I just realized, well, why not just write about that? Like I think it's a really hard thing for musicians to make that step into writing about something that you're really letting people into your your own private and like unique place. So I think that was the big step for me, was to just try to write from that place that I was going through that stuff at the time.
And now I've read that since then you said about sharing kind of those personal stories and emotions with people, it's almost cathartic. So how has that shift been then? That from first being, I suppose, quite anxious or nervous to get that out there, to now where you can kind of feel comfortable with sharing those thoughts?
I think it's one of those things where the first couple times you do it, it's really hard and it's really scary. But then every time I started sharing something, I realized I was getting feedback from people that they were going through similar things. Or, for example, when I released Slow Burn, like I got messages from people being like, wow, your song really connected with this thing I'm going through, or I really connected with this lyric or whatnot. And thank you for being so open, and thank you for this. And it was like that kind of thing. It wasn't a reinforcement, like a validation, but it was just kind of this moment where I was like, wow, they're right. Like there is something really comforting about opening up with that,
And that was Slower in particular, because that song, like you say, is about a time when you were a darker time in your life. But there's some optimism, I suppose, in there as well, because the line I think that struck me the most in that song is, maybe that's a fault of mine, but dwelling gives you nothing. So that idea of kind of lingering in those thoughts, do you see that as a positive song as well? Kind of, or at least not so negative?
It's funny you say that, because there are a lot of people that say, hey, Jenny, you write the saddest songs. And I'm like, yeah, okay, they're melancholy, I guess. But I think the thing about when I write and how I write is that it touches on a lot of dark and serious things, which I guess I go through and I try to think about and relate to other people. But I always want to add lines here and there that, spin the perspective a little bit, in that I guess the thing I want to emphasize most is it's okay to go through that. And it's okay to feel lost and confused and broken. And there's all these emotions that it's okay. And to dwell on it, it doesn't do you any good, but it's okay to think about it. And it's okay to like feel it,
And well, I mentioned the word catharsis. So after having written that song, did it feel better? Did it kind of make you understand that side of yourself better?
100%. Yeah, it's whenever I play a lot of shows. You heard of So Far Sounds?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I play a bunch of those. Well, I was playing a bunch of those in the city and around other states and whatnot. And every time I talk about that song, I say like when I wrote it and when I start singing it, it's just this really cathartic experience for me, because it reminds me that it's okay that I went through it, and then it helps me realize that it's you move on and you work through it. So that's kind of one of those songs for me that every time I play it, like I take that away from it.
So you can see the journey kind of that you've had since then.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when it comes to the music, then, because like say you're interested in these kind of melancholy lyrics, but then also a hopeful note within them. But then, how do you make the music kind of convey what you want to say in the lyrics? And especially looking at the two new songs, "Satellite" and "Now We Know," that those are musically kind of a step up from what you were doing before. So how does the music kind of reinforce what you're trying to say in the songs?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I think I write a lot with minor chords, so that definitely emphasizes it. But I think the thing that I wanted to do with the last two singles that I released was go in a direction that wasn't necessarily this up-tempo bop per se, but to give it a little more pace and a little more texture and layers that emphasize the emotions of it. So when I worked with my producer, Andy Seltzer, we basically talked about creating an atmosphere and creating a vibe. And, you know, I don't know if it like emphasizes super sad moments or anything like that, but I think it creates a space. And I wanted to create this, you know, atmospheric space where you can sit and be in your thoughts and just kind of get transported to a place. So that was kind of a big thing when we talked about the production.
Who were the artists that did that for you? Because I know you were influenced by bands like Fleetwood Mac, but are there specific artists that you kind of that create an atmosphere that you like to sit in, so to say?
Yeah, I must say someone I'm incredibly inspired by right now is Phoebe Bridgers.
Okay.
Especially her latest record, which didn't influence obviously my last two singles, but are going to be a huge influence in terms of how I approach the sonic elements for my next batch of music that I'm going to produce.
Well, what is it about her style that you like?
You know, I think she's very blunt in a really cool way. I think in her last record, they just use the most unique sound elements that I think I would never think about using. And I honestly, I don't even think I could name what instruments they are because they're so unique and so weird that it's like another world. And I think that's kind of this idea is that you listen to that record and it just takes you to another world, like another space.
Right. And I find it interesting that you use the word blunt because now I read during my research that now we know that was the first time or one of the first time for you where you were really direct in the lyrics. So is that something you kind of want to do going on, kind of getting even closer to yourself than you are?
For sure. I remember talking to a songwriter once and they said, you know, being as direct and not necessarily completely literal, but being as direct as possible with your lyrics is the best thing you can do. And I think I realized from, you know, my first EP, there's a lot of, you know, metaphors and use of symbols and stuff like that. And I like that. And I think that's really cool in songs in the right way. But I guess what I wanted to do was start being more direct in what the emotions were and what I was trying to say. So Now We Know is kind of like the first song. And I think I've said this before, but usually I write lyrics after writing the music. And this was kind of one of the first songs that I've written that it was all lyrics pretty much first. Okay. I just wrote it all out. Yeah.
And now, if I'm incorrect, please correct me, but the song is about, I think, kind of realizing that a relationship is beyond repair. So when that was happening, do you kind of then immediately go to pen and paper and think, okay, I can write a song about this, or is it something that gradually kind of pops up?
Yeah, you know, it was something had happened early 2019, and I took a week or two to kind of digest what had happened. And after that, you know, I kind of just thought, well, what's my outlet? Like, how can I take what I've been through and experience and just try to work through it? So writing that song again was also very cathartic because it was very helpful for me to see it from like a different perspective and just get some sense of personal closure. So yeah, that song. I just kind of felt, oh, I need to write this out. I like need to do this. Okay.
And now you've released these two singles, and you mentioned Andy Seltzer just now. And I also read that you were working on another either EP or LP. I don't know how kind of the world being as it is now threw a wrench in that, but yeah, how far along are you with the next thing that you're going to put out?
Yeah, so basically, will be working with Andy again, which I'm really excited about. another one of his producers who's in Nashville. And basically, we're gonna do a lot of this stuff will be remote. I'll record some elements and send it down, and you know, he'll work with some of the sounds. And my goal is to eventually actually get down to Nashville and do some of the production in person. But we're working on those logistics of how to make that happen because of you know, COVID. But yeah, we're kind of in the pre-production stage right now. We're really trying to, you know, look at the songs and figure out kind of tempo and where to go in terms of influences and stuff like that, which is kind of, I think, a really cool part of the process, because before you go into it, you kind of think about what you want it to sound like and where you want to go with it. So it's basically where we're at right now.
So this is the fun stage where all that creativity gets to come out. Yeah,
all the initial ideation that you kind of go through before you get into it in full and like really start laying down parts and vocals and stuff like that. So
because you already kind of mentioned it, but what, as much as you can share, well, what kind of direction do you see these new songs going in? What can you tell me about kind of the mindset that you were in when you wrote these songs and now thinking about how to flesh them out?
Yeah, I think the thing about this next EP is with the last two singles, I went in a little more of a pop direction from my first EP, which was definitely more in the folk vein. Then I kind of thought, well, wouldn't it be really cool to kind of spin the last two songs and kind of go in a pop direction? I don't think I'm going to totally veer from the pop direction in total, but I think it's going to be a little less pop oriented. Think Phoebe Bridgers, think some elements of Bon Iver. We've been putting together a playlist of songs that, you know, we're going to take influence and inspiration from. And there's some really random things in some of the songs that me and the producer have picked. So, yeah.
Final question then. What is one influence that people might not expect from you, musical or other?
One influence that people would not expect. You know, it's hard to say it's a total influence, but people usually don't guess that I listened to a lot of soul music growing up. I think it's just like some of the best music, Motown, soul.
I agree.
Yeah. So I think it influences in the sense of expression, I guess, and there's certain elements of some rhythm that I try to influence in, but for the most part, yeah, it's probably the secret sauce in the back of my head that I listen to. Yeah.
Right. And I know times are very uncertain, but do you have any idea of when you will be able to bring that EP out?
I hope, my goal is to release a single before the end of the year. If all the ducks line up and we can do it in a quicker sense, because usually actually once you get into the weeds of production, it can go very quickly. And so I'm hoping that before the end of the year, I'll have a single out. But if not, it'll be, early 2021 for sure. Because I don't think I'm gonna, some people, I don't know if you've talked to a lot of other artists right now, but some people are waiting to release music until they can actually perform it and tour it. Which I definitely get with some music, like especially people that are touring bands, you gotta they gotta coincide. Yeah. But I think there's something about certain music that can get released that people can just sink their teeth into and digest it before you go out and tour it and perform it everywhere. So, yeah.
Fair enough. All right, yeah. Jenny, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.